So I want to do something a little bit different today. We've been doing reflections on the gospel, and we've seen, more or less, some more views for Sundays, and we're only getting about about 15 to 20 people viewing the daily broadcast. So I want to do something just a little bit different today and offer my own thoughts as I've been reading and trying to follow these things. It's very important to me that we get back to church as soon as possible, but also being able to do that in a safe way. And so rather than giving a deep dive into the gospel, just my own thoughts, as people have been asking me when they come to the church to pray and I'm there, and emailing and things like, Father, when is things going to get back to normal? When can we come back? So just to offer my own thoughts about what I've been reading. I know a lot of people out there are reading their articles and listening to the news and things like that, informing their own opinions. And so I don't offer this, of course, as you know, I'm not a doctor, so I don't offer this as a definitive thing, and I'm not an economist, so I don't know the right answers to these questions. So just some thoughts to consider. First of all, all of this is working. Our federal government, our states' governments, the CDC, all of these different institutions, they're working off of models. And I've been trying to follow a few of the different models and a few of the different institutions that are helping to track the coronavirus, this COVID-19. That were taken from those models, data from other countries. We don't know how great their data gathering is. And we're taking data from other countries, and they're also taking data that's coming in live from the health departments in different counties and states, right? So this data is plugged into models, and then the models show different futures, right? So there's a lot of different models that they're working off of. And what it does seem to show is that there seems to be severe outbreaks in densely populated areas. So New York, areas in Florida, we're seeing, even in North Carolina, there's a greater outbreak in Mecklenburg, that is Charlotte area, than there is in our own area in Forsyth and Guilford counties. We see Seattle, Washington, we see LA, we see San Francisco, we even see greater, in Atlanta. And of course, because those people live closer together, they'd be in more contact with each other, such as, New York, where people are living on top of each other. So these densely populated areas are getting hit the worst. But certainly what the media is reporting, and we always have to be very judicial about what the media reports. What the media is reporting and what doctors and nurses are seeing is grossly different. I know that there's certain news outlets that are reporting in a very real way every single day from a different doctor and nurse that are saying, we're being inundated, this is the worst thing that we've ever seen, we're strained. And yet there's other doctors that are saying, look, I'm in these hospitals and we're strained, but we're certainly not at the end of our ropes. We haven't hit that limit in our ICUs and in our quarantine areas that we have. So what we do know is that looking at the models that are coming out and the models that are continuing to be honed and the predictions change, and the actualities are very different from each other. What does this mean? We were certainly late in our response of social distancing and the precautions that we're taking, I think, to help slow the spread as it keeps, coming out 15 days, 30 days to slow the spread. And we're seeing that the models and the data that's coming in, I should say, is more a linear spread than it is exponential. Because that was the fear, is that we were going to see this exponential spread that was going to spike. Now we're seeing more linear movement along the. Now, could this be that data is off, that we're not testing enough, that we're not testing for antibodies, things like that, to see some people who, had it and they might even not have known that they had it, but now they're immune from it? Sure, absolutely. I think we can always do more when it comes to the collection of data. And maybe the precautions, sheltering in place, social distancing is helping that so that it's not exponential. We don't know. This was the big paradox of the social distancing, is if we stay 6 feet away from each other, if we wear masks, if we don't wear masks, if we, limit contact with others, if we, aren't going out to these places where we gather together, in the end, they're going to say, well, you overreacted. Look, it didn't do anything. Well, that's because we did all these things. And so there certainly is merit to say, yeah, we should be, limiting our contact with other people, and this will help spread, this will help keep from any sort of spread. Then comes the next thing. I was even meeting with an IT technician that's trying to get us, up and running in the church for live streaming, trying to get those internet speeds up. And we still have a couple technicians coming tomorrow from Spectrum, because there's, go figure, people disagreeing about why we're not getting the internet speeds we're paying for. But as a good steward, as the pastor, I have to be sure that what the money that we're putting in, we're getting the things that we deserve. We can't just be throwing money around. But even a tech asked yesterday, Father, when are we going to get back to normal? And I thought, well, why are you asking me? I'm no expert on these things. But it's hard to say. I think, we have to keep in mind that there's an economic impact to all of this, but there's also a health impact. Like, we can't just say, okay, everybody just go back to life as normal, and then we see a secondary spike, or we see that this spreads in such a way. But I can certainly say that we should be treating this like a wildfire. When they treat a wildfire and it goes out, and there's these huge there's these huge blazes. The first thing is get the wildfire under control. But even after the wildfire is under control, it doesn't mean that it's over, that the areas that have burned, are not. Then they have to look for embers, right? So you have many, many acres or square miles that are burned. And they don't just say, okay, it's out, we're good. They look for embers in which it can start to flare up again. And in this sense, I think we do need to be looking for those embers, and we should probably push our state and our local leaders to start to relax some of those prescriptions very soon, so that those who are healthy, who have recovered, they're able to get back to work, they're able to come to church, they're able to interact with people, of course, in a modified way, because we want to be on guard. But there's certain areas in our communities that we shouldn't be fearful about this, but we should have extra caution as we go out. And so, just looking at the numbers and of course this is Wednesday morning, and so just looking at some of these numbers. So Mecklenburg County has a confirmed 810 cases, with 6 deaths. In Wake, where Raleigh is, so Charlotte is in there. Charlotte is in Mecklenburg County. Wake County, where Raleigh is, 336 confirmed cases with zero deaths so far. Again, we don't know where these numbers are coming from, whether it's a confirmed death from COVID-19, or whether it's a death because, if a 90-year-old person dies, and it's because their heart gave out, and they were confirmed with COVID-19, were they going to die in 2 months anyways, whether they had COVID-19 or not? Oh, we don't know. And so that's a good question that we should be asking. So 6 deaths. Okay. Then we go down to Guilford County, right next to us. Greensboro is there. 119, High Point is in Guilford County as well. 119 confirmed cases and 5 confirmed deaths. Forsyth County, where we are in Kernersville, 105 cases with 2 deaths. And so we look at Mecklenburg and Wake. Now let's take the whole triad together. So we're talking about Guilford and Forsyth County. So if we add that together in the whole triad area, so Greensboro, High Point, and that other city, Winston-Salem. So those 3, and Kernersville is right smack dab in the middle, right? Heart of the triad, here we are, right? Add those together and we're only getting 204 confirmed cases. So even in the triad area, which there's a lot of movement in this area, we're still looking at less community spread, and it's not even exponential or linear. It's just kind of cases that are adding up, but it's not a spike. And so that's even less added together. It is less than Wake County combined. So 336. We're only getting to 224 cases in the area, and deaths even added up are only 7, right? So in this area, I think our community should be allowed a certain pass while they monitor it, and say, if we start seeing an increase of cases, let's go back to a restricted movement and restricted interaction, more of a not a shelter in place, but a safer at home sort of order. Like if you need to go out for a haircut, well, don't go out if you've had a fever. Don't go out if you've been in contact with somebody with a fever. I need a haircut. I got to get out at some point. Otherwise, father's going to be buzz cutting his head again, and that's not pretty. I can't see the lines in the back. But for example, this is the information that we're operating off of right now. Well, we have our daycare open under reduced operations because some families have decided to keep their kids at home while they're out of work and things like that. But at the same time, we're monitoring this in the area, and the CDC is monitoring it for us. I'm sorry, not the CDC, but the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. They're monitoring our area so that they can call us at a moment's notice and say, you're a hotspot. Things are starting to grow, and cases are starting to be confirmed. The daycare has to shut down. Or if we see a child who is visibly sick or gets sick at the daycare, we shut down, we sanitize, we wait to reopen, so that we're being proactive about this. I think it's important to recognize what our country was founded on, and I hate to get political about this. It was not founded on the federal government dictating our lives. It was founded on the fact that states have rights, but even within those states, we can't be treating this as one thing is good for the whole state, but for the state to assist local communities in trying to track this and trying to set policies forward and the way that we live our lives so that we don't have to just shut everything down. We know that this is going to have a huge economic impact. That's a big part of it. With all of these jobless rates and things like that, as a church we have to look at that as well, because I can continue to ask people to give, and people have been generous. But at the same time, people can't give if they're not getting a paycheck. Some families said, we're out of work, but we're going to continue to support the church. God bless you, and God love you. Your reward will be great in heaven, and that's certainly a help. But we have to consider these things, that if somebody is young and healthy, even if they've recovered, maybe they test positive for the antibodies and say, wow, I had it, I didn't even know. Get them back to work, and get them involved again. We can't just sit around all the time. They call this week the longest week. That's kind of the name that they've put forward for it. And so they call it the longest week, and yet really for us Christians it's Holy Week. When they say this is going to be the most difficult week for us, well, this was the most difficult week for Jesus. So we have an opportunity here, right? We have Holy Week, and it's not holy because of what Christ did necessarily, and that's not necessarily why we call it holy. We call it holy because we still have the opportunity to grow in holiness, to accompany our Lord, to make changes in our life so that we might draw closer in imitation of his own life. And let's also not play the blame game of saying the situation we're in is because of this person or this political party or this institution or that. Let's just recognize that we're all just taking things day to day, and we can't hold anyone to what they say. For example, I've said, my hope is we'll be able to live stream. We take that one day at a time. We ran into one issue on Thursday. We ran into another issue on Friday. We ran into another issue on Monday. We ran into another issue on Tuesday. And now I'm waiting for a technician to come in order to try and overcome these problems that we've been having. And it might be that we just have to say in the end, we can't overcome this, but we've taken it day by day, living in the hope that we'll be able to provide something. And I think that's what everybody's trying to do. They're trying to live in hope, and from day to day, the data, the models, the economy, our own individual circumstances, they change. So this is what I've been trying to do, and I hope you will try and do as well, as we stay as much informed as possible, but we don't live with anxieties. We just lay down at the end of the day, set our head down on the pillow, and just say, Lord, I did the best that I could with what you gave me today. Accept that as my offering. That was today. Tomorrow, Lord, I don't know what this is going to hold. They might extend these things for, 15 days after those 30 days. They might, begin to lift these prescriptions and these precautions in a week's time. All that we can do is say, Lord, this was my little field that you asked me to work in, and I did everything that I could to fulfill my activities, my responsibilities, my vocational duties as best as I could for your glory, the salvation of souls, and for the building up of the church. And so that's the attitude that we should have in these days in which we recognize the only thing that we have is our home life, maybe our work if we're still able to get to work, but always the living for the glory of God. So my prayers are with you, and I hope that some of this helps to bring a bit of peace and to recognize we're in this together. We're going to continue to take each day as it comes, and soon, I hope, sooner rather than later, we're all gathered together before the altar of God. God bless you. You remain in my prayers. Please pray for me, the staff of the parish, and all of your brothers and sisters at Holy Cross.